In this video, I'm going to talk about the DISCO method to do assignments. The short version is, the DISCO method is do your assignment as soon as possible. Get it over and done with on the first opportunity to get. Now, when I say do your assignment, you don't have to complete the assignment. You just have to get 50% of the assignment done. So obviously, if you get an assignment on Monday and you have a birthday party or soccer training, or maybe you don't get started on Monday. But as soon as possible, you don't do anything else until your assignment is at 50%. Now, sometimes you'll get an assignment and you actually don't know enough to get started yet, right? The teacher hasn't taught you that content and they're just giving you the assignment early so that they don't, get in trouble. But the idea is do your assignment as quickly as possible to the point where you can get 50%. Now, off a recording, I might talk about some of the specific. Method is named after my friend Disco, and I learned a lot from him and his approach to how he did his arts degree. His engineering degree, he took it a little bit more seriously, but for his arts degree, he really just he had a very interesting system to approaching his arts degree, especially referencing. But I'll tell you about that more off the recording. Anyway. So the DISCO method, do your assignment until you get to 50% as quickly as possible. Once you're at 50%, then you can go out on the boat, then you can start playing video games, then you can watch some Netflix again. But once you're at 50%. Now, the reason for this is because you don't know how long it's going to take to do 50%. And when I say 50%, it's enough that if you handed this in, it would pass. But what this does is it gets you in the mindset. It means that you can start thinking about your assignment while you're on the boat and say, oh, look, I'm going to change that part. It's a lot easier for you just to tidy up an assignment once you have the bones, right? So get to half the word count. Get so that the point, if you had to hand in this assignment now, you'd get something. A really important thing to consider is in the HSC, you need to hand in something. Because even if you don't hand in anything, you'll get an end determination if you don't if you don't hand in your assignment on time, you will get an indetermination warning letter, which says you need to hand in something for this assignment, and even though you'll still get 0, if you don't hand in something, you won't get a HSC. So my key here is do that something now. You're going to have to do that something sooner or later. Get it over and done with now. I try to take this attitude with my as a teacher now with my marking, that I do my marking the day that I get it. I try to get my marking done before I do anything else, or at least get a start on my marking as quickly as possible. And that way, because I know that if my marking is going to take, 5 hours, 10 hours, whatever it's going to take the same amount of time. So I might as well get it over and done with quickly, so that way I don't have it hanging over me. If anyone ever watches the movie Wayne's World or Wayne's World 2, Jim Morrison gives a similar line about doing your homework on Friday so you can party on the weekend. But anyway, I'm going to move on. Okay. So DISCO method, a couple of other things to consider. Working with a buddy can really help you to get through the slump, right? There are times where you're like, I just cannot stand this assignment anymore. But you'll know, hey, if I give up, I'm going to be letting my friend down. So the two people push each other to continue their assignment, to get their assignments done. Yeah, so working with a buddy is a really, it's a big tip. The next thing I'd say is, you need to have someone proofread your assignments. Markers will be resentful if they see something that they know the squiggly line would have picked up, right? You need to look at the bare minimum to check that there's no spelling errors, right? That's the bare minimum. The next thing I'd say is you want to make sure that you address the assessment criteria. This is so obvious, I feel silly when I say it, but the assessment will tell you specifically what it wants you to do, and then there will be marking criteria. Now, it doesn't matter how great your assignment is if your assignment is not what the teacher asked for, right? In the last week, over the weekend, I marked some reports, and some of the reports were really good. They just didn't answer the question that I asked. And it's very hard for me as a marker to give those people marks. I just sit there thinking, oh man, this is terrible. Why didn't they read the question properly? And why didn't they read the marking criteria? Because once you have the marking criteria, they've given you the answers from the back of the book. Just make sure that if it says give 4 examples, that you gave 4 examples. If it said legal and ethical considerations, make sure that you've addressed legal and ethical considerations. Now, a great way to check, because sometimes you can become blind to your own mistakes, is give it to someone else. I'd suggest your mum, your dad, your older sibling, right? A friend who does the subject, a friend who doesn't do the subject. Look, once you're getting to the dog, that's not ideal. But maybe you have a really, really, really smart dog. But generally speaking, right, showing it to someone else is a great way. If you're not happy enough that you can show your work to your parents, you shouldn't be showing your work to me. right? If you're not happy enough that you can't find a friend who's doing the subject that you're willing to share your work to say, hey, does it look like I've left out anything? Now, maybe you're in a hyper competitive class and you don't want to show it to someone, but if there's no one you can show it to, come and tell me and then we'll talk, right? But I'm okay with people saying that they don't understand something in my assignments and asking for clarification. That's okay. If you finish early, right? If you finish your assignment a week early because you did the DISCO method, right? You might even be able to find markers who will give you a look over. Now, they probably won't mark it because I don't want to mark things twice, but they might look at it and say, okay, I'm looking at it. I have concerns that maybe you haven't addressed this or this. And that way you're not going to be someone who leaves out an entire section like I had 2 people do in the last assignment. That's terrible. In the HSC, you can't afford to leave out entire sections. That could be the difference between you getting a band 6 and you not, right? So, now that I think I've stressed all the key points of the DISCO method, the DISCO method itself refers to do your assignment as quickly as possible to the point where you would get 50%, right? That way, you're never going to get an N award, right? You're never going to get an N determination is the more recent terminology, right? That way, you're started. Once it's started, it's a whole lot easier to add once you've started, once you've got those bones, right? It's, you don't want to have assignments hanging over you. And once you've started, you can say, oh, well, I've at least got half, right? Then the other advantage of the DISCO method is you can identify problems. You might get to do the assignments and realize, oh my God, I don't know anything about this thing. I don't know what to do. I have a problem. My assignment's not going to work. I don't have the resource that I need. I don't have the reference I need. And you can go and talk to the teacher or the lecturer and they'll fix it, right? Or they'll tell you how to fix it, right? Whereas if you leave it till the night of the assignment, you don't have any of those options. Those options are cut off from you, right? You don't have those options anymore. So if it's going to take the same amount of time, do it the day that you get it. Okay, now that I've talked about the DISCO method, now the last time I recorded this video, I spent 8 minutes, and most of that was me telling this ridiculous story. So here I'm going to add a story just to, for color. Okay. When I was in France studying in Lyon, I did some subject, I don't remember the name of it, but the entire mark was me giving a speech in French about a book. And Disco, he was the one who told me to do the subject because he said it'd be easy. He's like, hey, do this book with me. It's by Camus. I've heard of Camus. And 2 people are allowed to work on this book, so let's do that, right? And we can split the work. I said, okay, fine. I think somewhere I borrowed or bought a copy of the book in French, and I tried to read it. And then I said, hey, I've got a friend in London, and she posted me the book in English. I still didn't read that. But I found myself in... Disco also signed us up to do it like this, to be the second presenters. So I found myself in class just, not paying attention. And then suddenly I heard my name being pronounced in French. And warning bells started ringing in my ears. And I'm like, oh my God, why is my name being mentioned? And I found out that my name was being mentioned because Disco and I were going to be presenting next week. And we had not written a speech that was going to be the entirety of our grade for this subject. So Disco said, don't worry, we're just going to sit down together tomorrow and we're just going to work until it's done. And I don't know how long we spent. I don't know, 12 hours, 15 hours, something like that. We spent all day working on it. And it was done. And then I had a week, not to worry. I added a few touches here and there, but it was done. All right, it wasn't hanging over my head. I wasn't worried about it anymore. Right? By having my buddy work with me, I worked through those times where I would have given up, where I would have got distracted, because I knew someone else was... even though we were both doing our own speech, the 2 weren't related. We helped each other. When we had a question, I could bounce off my friend. Right? And then it was done. So then I thought it would be funny to start my speech that was worth the entirety of my grade with an icebreaker, a joke, if you will, right? There's people say, start your speech with a joke. So I said, I'm going to do my speech in the form of interpretive dance. And I'd told my friend, this Canadian girl, beforehand, I'd said, hey, can you laugh when I say that so people know that it's a joke? And she laughed. She laughed, and then the entire class turned around and gave her a death stare, and like this look of, you ignorant American, this person is about to perform his art, and you're laughing at him? And then the teacher, she gave me this nod, and she rubbed her chin, she said, oh, okay. Like she said this in French, but very interesting. Let's see how this goes. And I had an out-of-body experience where I found myself unable to control my body as I realized I was going to start doing. Even now, I'm getting anxiety thinking about this. I found myself, my body was moving, and I was doing interpretive dance. I was a snowflake traveling across the Atlantic Ocean on the day that Albert Camus was born. And then I realized I couldn't do it anymore. I'm like, okay, actually, I'm not going to do that. And then I looked at my friend like it was her fault. And I then, to demonstrate how hard this book is to read, right? The first in the French version, not in the English version. In the French version, the first sentence is over 300 words long. There is no full stop. There's no period on the first page of this book. And I read this, and the teacher's like, no, you're not supposed to read the book. You're supposed to give a speech. And I said, I know. I'm demonstrating how long the sentences are in this book. Anyway, I got 85% in that, which is a high distinction at uni. And there's a joke in France that 90% in France is for the teacher, and 95% is for God, right? So I felt pretty good about my speech. It was probably because, that ignorant American, laughed at me that the teacher felt bad and she gave me a good mark. So that's my story about the disco method.